everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kat. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a clay squash or pumpkin. You can also use the first half of this tutorial to make anything from a face, like a complete spherical face, or I don't know, a beach ball or an egg, or any sort of closed round shape. So this tutorial is actually very flexible. I just specifically was making a pumpkin because one, I'm working on a project for class, and two, I like pumpkins. And with Thanksgiving coming up, it is a harvest holiday, so it makes sense for that as well. I'm not going to show you guys the dried product because I'm thinking about doing a glazing video possibly in the future, but it all depends on you guys. Do you want to see a glazing video? Do you want to see me glaze some ceramic pieces? Because if so, I am more than willing to make a video doing that. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see a video like that. Anyways, let's get into the video and I'll show you how to make this great pumpkin. To start off, you want to cut some clay off of your block or out of your bag. And you can also use other types of clay for this. Primo clay will be a little bit tougher, so that'll take longer. But if you really wanted to, you could make it to bake in the oven instead of a kiln. It's just really important if you make it in an oven, you also must make sure there are holes in your piece. If you don't, it could end up in a fiery mess. And I would suggest doing a larger hole in Primo clay. Okay, so you start with a regular ball of clay, and then what you want to do is you want to take your thumb and push it right in the middle, just like that, and create a hole just by pinching. So you're going to want to go around the outside and push your fingers together, thumb on the inside always, and just pinch around. So this is essentially just a giant pinch pot, but you can make it into several different shapes once you get it to be a sphere. And honestly, I didn't know how to do this until some of my classmates told me how to do it. So this is called a balloon once you get it made and sealed off, because it'll create an air pocket inside. The mass inside will stay the same. So you can change the shape on the outside, but it'll still be the same size. So you can just work by pushing out the sides as you go, squeezing until they're even. And then you can squeeze in the top, or you can just put on another piece onto the top. That's what I'm gonna end up doing here in a moment. Okay, so there's my smaller hole, and I'm going to score and slit. So if you don't have a good scoring tool, a good tool to use is a fork, just like this one. You can get cheap ones from Salvation Army or the dollar store. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. You just go ahead and score all that around the opening. Next, you want to grab a hunk of clay. I just grabbed some out of my bag. And I just use a paintbrush to put some water on it. Now, normally you see people use like actual slip, but honestly, I just use water. I have for a while now, and it works just fine. I haven't had any problems with things coming apart, because as you put the water on, see, it blends with the clay. You can see here. It's not just water anymore. It is taking off some of the loose clay bits, and it blends with it. So instead of having a pre-mixed container of slip, I just continue this way. Because the problem with having a pre-mixed container of slip is it gets moldy and smelly depending on how you keep it. So you can't keep it for too long. So you have to be going through it in quite a big quantity in order to make a huge dent. Or make very small quantities every time, and that's a pain. Okay, so now we want to mash this so that it'll be big enough to go around that like that. and you want it to be thick enough as well. So this is about the thickness. This might be a little thicker, but that's okay because we will be blending it in. So you just go ahead and push that in. Now, when you're making a closed sphere, you obviously will want to have a hole in it after it's been made. So you're only ballooning this for the time being until you have your shape of whatever you're making, whatever object you're making. You just want it to be ballooned for that time. So being ballooned pretty much means that all the air is trapped inside, right? So it can't escape. But once you have your form done, you have to poke holes in it, otherwise it will explode in the kiln. So I'm just working on smoothing, and I don't have any of my tools right now, that's why I'm not using them. So now you can see if I squeeze it, it's the same size. It's not like it lost mass. That is because of the ballooning effect. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start creating my actual shape, which is a pumpkin. It's more of a squash that has like this kind of a shape. So this is the, like, let's say this is the side. It's gonna be this kind of a shape. So it's gonna be pointed here at the top and round at the bottom. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to place down a pillow just like that, and then I'm gonna lay down some canvas just to protect the pillow because, I don't know, I might need it for other things too. This is just an old pillow I had laying around though, so it's not a big deal if it gets dirty. But the canvas also helps absorb the moisture that you get. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start creating the ridges. And it's important to have the balloon still working in your favor. So if you find that you have a hole in your balloon, just look on the outside. If you see any cracks, smooth those over. Those won't be a problem later. They won't compromise the integrity of the piece just because the balloon is only important when building it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go through with my fingers and mark where I want these ridges to be on the top. Now, if you want to, you can just stop here. This is a very loose shape of a pumpkin. But if you're trying to really go for a realistic type of squash or pumpkin, you definitely want to take this further, like I'm gonna do. And here's where you can start adding pieces. When it's this wet, I don't worry quite as much about scoring and slipping, but you really should if you're adding a bigger slab. But I'm just adding tiny little bits, so it's not quite as important because you're gonna be spreading it out. This is where the pillow comes in handy because you don't get any squashed areas, or at least not as many. Every once in a while I'm going back to the bottom and just shaping that out once again. So to make the stem, you want to dig a hole, but you don't want to scrape things out. You just want to kind of push it in. And I used my paintbrush that I used for my water to do this part. So you push that in, and then you can like kind of twist the paintbrush around to smooth out the edge. And that creates a little bit of a bump around where the stem will go. Then using very wet clay, you need to roll out a tube that's thicker on one side, so bigger on one side. Then score the inside of that hole you created, put some water on there, and then you can just stick that tube with the big side first onto that hole and push it in until you get almost like a Hershey's Kiss bottom to it. So it looks like the stem is growing out of the pumpkin. This is the finished pumpkin. It's still wet, but at this point, all you would need to do is poke a hole. You can either do that on the bottom where you won't see it, or depending on how you're gonna display it, you could very easily poke a small hole somewhere else, even in this seam where the stem is. You can probably slip a really small piece of metal in there a few times to create a good vent. If you guys would like to see me glaze something like this in order to see how to make it look realistic, then go ahead and comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. It has been a while since I've done an actual tutorial on how to make something out of something, you know, whether it's a painting or clay or anything like that. So I'm really glad that I finally have the time to do that now since I'm done with Inktober. And I have a lot of exciting videos coming up. I'm super pumped. And as you can see, I moved my office around, or if you don't realize that I've moved my office around, then you probably aren't subscribed. So you should do that. And also go check out my channel for more videos like this and even some things that are a little bit different. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see every time I upload. And share this video with your friends if you think that they'd enjoy it too. Do it, meow!
Oh.